Hey, kitty. Tilly was rubbing her face on my face, and then the camera started rolling, and she went, I don't care. She does this thing sometimes where she'll have to meet my hand. Sometimes she'll even jump up. I don't know if she'll do it right now because she's not really on stable footing. But yeah, so I just came from a Seattle Symphony concert with Final Fantasy music. It's called Distant Worlds. And the last time I went to one of these was actually 10 years ago, so I'm really glad. Final Fantasy is definitely my favorite video game series. And so a big part of that is the music. The music is just, it gives you all the feels. Like within 60 seconds of the symphony starting playing, I like just tears down my face. It was just playing like the prelude, like so it's like just heart, right? That yeah, I don't know what that sounds like. I'll have to look at this video after to see what that even sounded like. But oh, and then it comes in with the strings. Da 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 Okay, yeah, definitely one of the strangest things that I've sung on this channel. So yeah, I loved it. I loved the orchestral music. They only played one song from Final Fantasy VI, and that was Searching for Friends, I think is the name. Final Fantasy VI is not just my favorite Final Fantasy game, it's just my favorite console video game ever. So even though I'm dressed like a Final Fantasy VIII character, I'm mainly doing that because it's really hard to dress like the characters from like the Super Nintendo and the Nintendo, because they're just like, you know, little sprites. They're just little squidgy guys, so it's a little bit harder to dress as them. But definitely Final Fantasy VI has a really warm place in my heart. And some other time when I'm dressed a bit different and maybe my voice is a little bit more rested, I'll try to record a video of me singing the opera sing. There's an opera scene in Final Fantasy VI. And if folks are lost, Final Fantasy VI is the name for it in Japan, and in the US it was released as Final Fantasy III. The reason I say Final Fantasy VI is because in Japan they also had a Final Fantasy III. So a lot of the fans will say Final Fantasy VI just for clarity's sake. And also it makes us seem like really cool nerds, if such a thing exists. So I was a little bit sad they didn't do the opera scene. Most of the concert, because 10 years ago they did do the opera scene, and most of the concert was devoted to Final Fantasy VII, because I believe next year in March they're supposed to be coming out with like a re-release of it with better graphics. And so they were trying to sort of pay tribute to that. And they definitely did Sephiroth's theme, and actually the conductor had the audience sing along. But they also had this giant, you know, choir, because a lot of it is, I think it's in Latin. But of course, you know, for the line where you sing very dramatically, Sephiroth! Yeah, so the conductor had the audience sing those parts, while, you know, the more formal chorus was folks singing like all the Latin that I don't know. It's a very spooky song. If you've never played Final Fantasy VII, I recommend going on YouTube and just searching for Sephiroth's theme. I believe the formal name is One Winged Angel. But as a Final Fantasy VI fan, I think that the final boss battle with Kefka is also really amazing music. So, what else did I want to say? I feel like I am always going to forget something because Final Fantasy is just my favorite series. I think one thing I did want to say was the story, because a lot of people joke about, like, well, it's called Final Fantasy, but they've released like over 20 games. Like, how final could it be? And so the story that I heard, and hopefully it's true and not just a legend, but the story I heard about Final Fantasy 1 is that basically the Squaresoft at the time, they were going out of business, and they decided to put out one last game, one final game, and it was Final Fantasy. But then it was a commercial success, and it saved their company. So that was back when it was called Squaresoft. Now it's Square Enix. And so I think I'm just very nostalgic for the older games. I feel like the newer games, the graphics are just too pretty, and it kind of gives me that uncanny valley feeling when they're trying to render a computer character to look sort of human, but they end up just looking really creepy. And I feel like they are almost there at like being able to make it look truly like an actor in a movie. But yeah, it's just unsettling to me. And again, the nostalgia of having those little squidgy sprites. I also felt like, at least when they were moving from Super Nintendo to PlayStation games, they sacrificed a lot of the gameplay elements in order to have better graphics. Even though Final Fantasy VII graphics were not that good at the time. Well, I think for the time they were amazing by people's standards, but it's definitely one of those things where, like, you'd be in a battle and it would just take so much time to even do a spell because they were so enamored with their ability now to do something with graphics, whereas before you couldn't do as much with graphics, so you had to put it all in gameplay. And I think part of what makes Final Fantasy VI my favorite game is the music, of course, and the storyline is great. Really, really stellar storyline. The the special skills that each of the characters had, I felt like that was very well balanced, and the game in general was well balanced, I felt. I don't know if I need to say spoiler alert for a game that's been out for 30 years, close to 30 years, but the thing about Kefka, the villain in Final Fantasy VI, is he wins. Halfway through the game, he just wins, and he destroys the Earth, and he rips it in half. And so the second half of the game is just starting over from scratch, and now you're down to one person, and you have to go find your friends.